Thank you, and I want to welcome my guests here today. I'm Councilman Anthony Coghill, and this is a post agenda regarding our fleet through all departments: police, fire, EMS, and public works. And we are here represented by all different branches. And if we could start just by introducing yourself so the public knows who you are, and then we'll start with the fire department. And Brian, we're looking forward to hearing as to what your analysis is of your fleet. So please, Brandon.
Good afternoon, Brandon Walton, Senior Manager, Fleet Services.
Lee Schmidt, Public Safety Director.
Lisa Frank, I'm the city's Chief Operating and Administrative Officer.
Carol Jones, Chief of the Pittsburgh Fire Bureau.
Brian Kikila, Assistant Fire Chief, Pittsburgh Fire.
Matt Davis, Assistant Fire Chief, Pittsburgh Fire.
Tim Leach, Vice President of the Pittsburgh Firefighters Union.
Okay, thank you, folks, and let the record be shown. I'm joined by Councilwoman Barbara Warwick and Councilman Bobby Wilson. Thank you for being here, and I just want to open with this. When I was appointed to the Equipment Leasing Authority Board, I know we always have issues as to, paying for new vehicles. It's very expensive, and, we have many of them. So just through all of our conversations and kind of analyzing where we're at in each department, I felt it was important for you all to speak directly to council and to the public and let people know where we are with our fleet. And with that, I'd like to go to Chief Jones in the fire department for your opening presentation as to enlighten us as to where you feel we are at this stage with fire engines and pumper trucks and everything else that you need, please.
Thank you, Councilman. We are in dire straits. Our fleet is aging, and the maintenance is becoming more and more expensive, and our call volume is increasing, so our call for services is going up. There is a massive supply chain issue that also affects the fire manufacturers. So the time to receive a truck once it's ordered has been extended. So an engine, for example, right now, if we ordered it today, it will be arriving in 2+ years, and a truck will take approximately 4 years. So with that, Assistant Chief Kokila is the person who's been managing our fleet for us, and he has developed a plan to help us stay ahead of the game, and I'm going to turn it over to him at this time.
Very good.
Councilor, thank you very much for the opportunity. As the chief mentioned, we are truly facing a fleet crisis, and that comes from a lot of perspectives. One, the infusement of CARES Act money across the nation has given a lot of municipalities the opportunity to purchase significant increases in their fleet. Couple that with the supply chain challenges, and now that what is an unprecedented order, we are seeing much more extended lead times for the production of fire apparatus. On average, an aerial ladder truck would be 4 years. On average, a new pumper would be 2 years. Specialty vehicles are somewhere between 3 and 4 years lead time. Even the purchase of a pickup truck or a command SUV is now extended because not only the production, but then the upfit of the same. So when we look at these challenges coupled with the age of our current fleet, and I believe that Mr. Walton would have a much better perspective on the cost associated with that, there are times where we're investing money to repair vehicles that are well beyond their effective lifespan. In our heavy run environment, coupled with our terrain, coupled with the fire duty and service that these vehicles are undergoing, our desired state would be a 7 years maximum frontline service with 3 years in reserve, and then the ability to offload that vehicle to recoup some value. What we have now is the ability, we can only dispose of vehicles when they're completely beyond anybody's serviceable life, just because we've over the course of time, there have been years where there were purchases not made. If we could look back at what the proposed program involves is a It's a comprehensive fleet plan which distributes that impact over multiple years rather than the large gap purchases, which then all go end of life at about the same time. So again, we've got we have provided you and the ELA board an assessment of the fleet, a report with that, and also now a comprehensive plan moving forward to replace those vehicles.
Great. Anybody else want to comment from the fire department? Matt? Timmy?
I think the chief's covered all the, the numbers and the nuts and bolts and everything, but I don't, I don't want to repeat what they said, but, I can't stress enough how much we are in dire straits, how much we are, as Chief Kukila said, in a crisis. We can talk about numbers all day here, but there are real examples of the crisis we are in that we've seen over the past couple of months where fire engines have been down. Fire engines go down for multiple reasons. They have to go out of service for state inspections. They have preventive maintenance, and they also have, mechanical failures. And we haven't had enough frontline trucks, engines and ladders, or spares to keep our firehouses up and running for the past couple of months. There's been at least 3 examples that I know of. One, I think, in the West End. One I know specifically happened in Arlington. And then once in Bloomfield, where an engine was out of service from Friday, March 31st, until Saturday, April 8th. That's 8 days. 8 days that there wasn't a fire engine in a firehouse. 8 days that the residents of Bloomfield and Lawrenceville were without adequate fire protection, where if the firefighters at that station showed up at a fire at their house, they would have had to tell them to hold on and wait for the other truck that's 2.5 miles down the road in the Strip District, while a fire doubles in size every 30 seconds. These are real world examples that we're seeing right now of the crisis that we're in, and the fact that, as the chief said, the lead build and delivery time on vehicles is over 2 years now. We need to address this problem now. It's going to get worse before it gets better if we don't do something today. And I think the city and council need to adopt a long-term buying plan for fire vehicles and then fund it, and not do what we have seen over the past 15 years, as you can see from Chief Kukila's assessment, where we don't buy fire trucks for 5 or 6 years, and then we have to buy 10 or 8 in a year. And you all balance your budget every year, and you're faced with that every 5 or 6 years, as we are now, where you have to make a large purchase, where it would be much better for the city to spread that money over time, and much better for the residents to ensure that they've got safe, operable, and adequate vehicles in the fire stations. So, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Leach. And I will tell you, as Chair of Public Works, I'm now Chair of Public Safety. But Public Works, I knew we had issues within the department, and, Director Hornstein will be up here in a little while addressing that. Pittsburgh Police Department, I knew we had issues, and, the Director Schmidt and I have talked about that, and Brandon and I have gone through that. But it wasn't until Brian, you and I and Timmy and Ralphie met a couple of weeks ago that I realized the importance in this fire department. I didn't realize. And Chief, to hear you say dire straits, that's what I need the other council members to hear. That's what I need the city of Pittsburgh to hear, because it is dire straits. I see it. I know it now just from our conversations. I want to thank you all for enlightening me. My job now is to enlighten the other council members in the city of Pittsburgh and the administration. Of course, I know they're well aware of the situation. And I did want to say one thing. This is not recent to this administration. This goes back years. It reminds me a little bit of the police department with our lack of numbers with our police officers. It's been ignored for years and years, and now it's all catching up to us. As you said, Timmy, now we have to make one large purchase. We need to stagger that out. Brian, if you have a plan like that you could present to us as to how we could just keep up to speed and what we need to get up to speed now, actually, too. I would love to know, how many pumpers, how many trucks, how many, pickup trucks, every vehicle you need in order to bring us up to speed. But before, Brian, I'll give you a little bit of time to, mull over that. It looks like you have those right in front of you. Okay. I don't want to know how many millions of dollars just yet. So, but I would like to open it up to Councilwoman Warwick, because I know she has some time constraints, and so does Mr. Wilson. And just any questions you have, Councilwoman, the floor is yours.
Okay, yeah, I guess I do have questions. So just generally, and I think folks have heard me say this before. So when we talk about when we look at our budget, right, and we talk about public safety, it is just enormous, right? It is a huge portion of our budget. And, as council people, we've got all kinds of other things, roads, I mean, there's just so many things, right, to make our communities whole. So I always, and I know that, generally speaking, the public is very supportive of public safety spending. So I'm kind of frugal by nature. So I'm always kind of want to ask those types of questions. So I guess, I don't know if I didn't specifically think of talking about fire, but that's who we've got here. But just in general, I guess, I mean, across the board, I mean, for public safety in particular, I guess I would want to know, has there ever been a case where we have not responded in a timely manner because we did not have a vehicle that could get to the emergency?
From the fire standpoint, I've been here 16 years now, and we have not. So as Mr. Leach stated, everything works on a system. Very seldom does one rig go out by itself, maybe for a medical call. But for a fire emergency, there is a multiple rig response. The first alarm will get us 5 engines and 2 trucks and 2 chiefs. So although that one rig was down, and as he also stated, time is of the essence when that happens. We've dodged a lot of raindrops with that. So when one rig is down, I still have 30 more backing it up, but there's a time gap, and time is critical. So to date, no, there hasn't been anything. But on the flip side of that, it just means the numbers are going against us, right? Pretty soon the law of averages will start going against us if we don't do something now about this.
Okay. And then I guess, how about for public safety? I know we don't have how about for police or EMS? Has there ever been a situation where we haven't been able to respond in time or in a timely manner?
Not able to respond, but yeah, I mean, there are times that with police and with EMS, if they're down vehicles or short a vehicle, similar to fire, that means someone else has to pick up that slack and sometimes respond from a different location than what it would be. So
Okay. And I guess for public safety, or sorry, not public works, and I know Director Hornstein. So do we have any examples of situations where public works couldn't do work that it needed to do because of fleet issues, like vehicles were down and we just couldn't do what we needed to do?
I'm going to bring
Or
Director
slowed
Hornstein to
something
the
down.
table, would you please? Either way. You need that question repeated?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so just if there, do you have any examples of situations where Public Works could not do work that needed to be done, or let's say a project took significantly longer than it should have taken because of fleet-related issues?
Oh, absolutely. Anything involving trimming in the right-of-way to keep the right-of-way safe and clear and visible. What we have is a piece of equipment, Tiger mower. We've had several of those down. In that situation, we are forced to hand cut, which takes quadruple the time. And so what folks will see is situations whereby the right-of-way becomes more unsafe. We also have situations where garbage collection is seriously delayed because we're waiting on vehicles to be returned from maintenance so that we can begin the shift. So we both have employees waiting for service. We have citizens waiting for service while we're waiting for the vehicle to be operational.
Okay. Thank you. And then I guess, so this this I would probably be more specific to fire. So are there cases, so, a vehicle specifically, I think like a fire truck has a certain lifespan, right? Which means a certain number of trips. Are there ways that we could respond, and maybe this is like a co-response public safety thing too, where we could be more targeted in how we're using specific vehicles to respond to specific things, so that we're not taking out like giant fire trucks to respond to something that doesn't require the equipment on that truck? Like, are there ways that we could target the fleet to sort of simplify our response and vehicle usage?
So this question comes up quite often. 70% of our calls are EMS-related calls that
70?
70,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more than that. EMS-related calls, calls where a rig doesn't have to have a pump or a ladder to assist the patients. If we were to get specialty vehicles, that would mean an SUV or a van or some other smaller vehicle for the 30-plus stations that we have. I don't see that as being cost-effective. And if I have a crew inside that particular vehicle and a fire comes while they're either leaving the patient or at the same time after transferring care of the patient, now this specialty vehicle has to go back to the house and get the rig that's needed to suppress the fire. So a lot of people have asked me that, but the complications, the cascading effects of such a move, to me, in my opinion, is not feasible.
So again, I guess as a follow-up to that maybe for Director Schmidt, so why is that 70% of fire of responses by the fire department are EMS or?
It's just the way it is. That's the nature. We are an older population now. The baby boomers, i.e. me, are getting to the age where things start to hurt all the time and we're having medical problems. We are the largest segment of the population generally in the country, and along with that, medical calls go up. And our role is to be a force multiplier for EMS. We are larger than them, about triple their size. We can arrive at the scene, stabilize the patient. EMS comes, offers advanced life support, and transports the patient. That's the system we have in place.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And then I guess this would be for everybody. Are there any vehicles in your various fleets that you don't use on a regular basis that, we could maybe downsize in order to, to focus on the vehicles that we're using all the time? I mean, that would be for everybody.
I think all of public safety has specialty vehicles, SCBA trucks, or scuba trucks, trench rescue trucks, foam tenders, multiple vehicles that are used for specialized use, hazmat, etc., that are not used as frequently, but they are just as important when they're needed. However, we don't replace those on a regular basis. Like the scuba truck, I think, is 30 years old, 40 years old.
Yes, so our trench rescue and our dive trucks, one is 1985, another one's 1986. So they are indeed trucks that are not used on a regular basis, that, have not, 1982 is the river rescue dive truck, and 87 is the trench rescue truck.
Okay.
So they are trucks that we don't use on a regular basis that, we've asked to be replaced, but we know that they are not a priority.
And they're still running. I mean, you can use them if you need them. Okay.
They still run.
Okay. And anyone else? Any other?
To that end, with when you have the specialty vehicles that maybe are older, Where we really run into a challenge with maintenance is locating parts.
Okay.
In last year, we had a decontamination unit, a mass decontamination unit that ended up out of service for a substantial period of time because we had to source a window regulator from a junkyard to make sure that we could get the window to return up and pass state inspection.
I don't think I have anything else. I guess I am a little too, this is more just a definition, so sort of what it means for a vehicle to be beyond its lifespan. 'Cause I know some folks will lease a new car every few years, right? And some folks will drive a car into the ground until it's just rusted out completely. My family is in the second group. But at any rate, so if you all could sort of give a definition of what that means for a vehicle to be beyond its lifespan.
Be happy to take that one. When we look at, there's a breakover point between a cost versus the benefit of retaining it. In the condition that our fleet is in, we are investing in replacement power plants, or the engines that drive the vehicle, in 11, 12, 13-year-old vehicles. That's not really we don't have another choice because we don't have the vehicles to replace it. To keep that vehicle in service, we have to invest in a replacement engine or in large replacement components to keep those vehicles able to deliver service. And with our reserve fleet being as aged as it is, and it is in equally poor condition, there is an effective time. The greatest scenario would be, again, that 7 to 3, 7 years frontline, 3 years reserve, and be able to sell it when we're able to recoup some of the money and reinvest it into the fleet. Where this gets compounding is the amount of money that the city's spending monthly on repairs for the very old fleet. Mr. Walton suggested that the number is close to $300,000 a month for vehicles that really shouldn't be on the road any longer. And you multiply that out, that's a substantial number. And 70% of that dollar figure is invested towards repairing the fleets and fire and some of the refuse vehicles.
So I guess with that, because I was also going to ask, so there is a market. So who would buy a used vehicle? Would that be like a smaller municipality or
currently
us?
The cities
us as well? Yeah.
It's currently the cities buying used vehicles.
Okay. I'm not against used. I just bought a 2015 van, so. But at any rate, okay. So that's good to know that there is, and so in a perfect world, we would sell our vehicles would be functional enough that we could sell them.
If you kept with a 7-year frontline, 3-year reserve for the fire fleet, we could still extract value from those vehicles at the end of that 10-year cycle.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman Warwick. And let it be known, Chief Gilchrist, newly minted Chief Gilchrist, has joined us. Thank you very much. And originally we were going to start with the fire department and then go to the police department. But we have Phil, if you could come up and join us as well to help represent the police department with Director Schmidt, that would be great. I just want to say personally, in evaluating, the fleet, I felt we need vehicles across the board, and expensive vehicles that are very much. But I felt the fire department was in the most need at this time, in this juncture. First of all, you're responding to 70%, as Chief Jones says, to our, 911 calls. So, and I know, and I've seen the fleet, and I've seen the used truck. Mr. Rick Earl over there showed me the used truck, and it's, some 25 years old, and it's just not acceptable. I see, Mr. Hornstein, Director Hornstein has another engagement, but so I'm going to go to you right now as to just fill us in on to what vehicles you feel you need in Public Works. But before we do that, I want to open up to Councilman Wilson for the fire department. if you have any questions for the fire fleet.
Okay. Let's see. This is for the fire fleet. And then,
Well, we could go with him first. You want to do it that way? I'm jumping
Yeah.
all over the place because this was not the order I planned, but, okay. So, Director Hornstein, I will say leasing the vehicles as we did last year, the administration came up with the idea. I felt that was successful. It was nice to have good running new vehicles that we can count on. But just explain to us the state of, your operation in Public Works as to what your needs are.
Okay, so take a step back to follow up. For Public Works, the average, accepted age of a vehicle useful life is 10 years. After that, much like Chief Kikil explained, the money that you put into the vehicle tends to outweigh its value. And so over an entirety of a fleet, if your useful life is 10 years, you should see an average age of 5 to 6 years if you average out the age of your fleet. So I'm going to go through some facts and figures, and I'm going to include the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure so you can kind of understand how our fleet is aged. Department of Mobility and Infrastructure has 28 vehicles. The average age is 11.7 years. The Bureau of Facilities has 30 vehicles. The average age is 10.1 years. The Heavy Equipment Division has 12 vehicles. The average age is 9.3 years. The Construction Division has 19 vehicles. The average age is 9 years. The Bureau of Environmental Services, so refuse, has 86 vehicles. The average age is 13.9 years. The Bureau of Streets, this is our plows, the Tigers, has 132 vehicles. The average age is 9.8 years. And the Parks Maintenance Division, which has 68 vehicles, the average age is 6.9 years. Now you may ask yourself, why is Parks so much lower than the others? That is because when we received the Parks Tax Trust funding, one of the first decisions that we made was to make a steady, consistent investment in the age of that fleet. And so one of the reasons why you see the average age is much younger is because for the last several years we've been making a steady, consistent investment in the average age of that fleet, and you will see that in the kind of maintenance responsive reports too. So I am sympathetic, empathetic, every type of thetic with public safety and fire and EMS and police because the condition of our fleet is dire as well, particularly in environmental services. Unique to Public Works, what I will say is I think the opportunity to lease for Public Works is greater than within public safety because we do have periods of time throughout the year when vehicles are not necessarily as active and don't need to be as active. So we think that there is space and opportunity there for us to explore, leasing opportunities. I still believe, and I will always believe, as Chief Kikila mentioned, that the best course of action to fix our aged fleet is the steady, very consistent annual funding to replace that which you need to own. We have demonstrated proof of that here as well. One other factor that impacts us, and just in terms of availability of vehicles for Public Works, and I'm going to focus strictly on the Bureau of Streets. I just ran a fleet analysis this morning. 10% of 14 of the 132 vehicles, so roughly over 10% of the Streets Division is in long-term parking right now at first vehicle awaiting maintenance. That's what age means. That means that 10% of our fleet are literally not available for use. So it has a pretty tremendous impact when that happens for us. We have to jockey vehicles and equipment around. We're moving vehicles from one location to another to support operations where we deem it fit. This is inherent waste. If the vehicle was reliable and ready to run, we would be performing more work in service of citizens every single day.
Thank you for that gloomy forecast. But as we can see, it's across the board in the city of Pittsburgh, and we'll go to the administration as to what ideas and how we feel we could remedy this problem in a little bit. Chief Gilchrist, I know you're new. I don't expect you to have dove into the fleet at this point so much, but if you want to offer anything as to, the fleet of EMS, I know Mr. Romano and I had many, conversations about this till the day he left, and, so I wanted to turn it over to you if you want to reflect on what your situation looks like.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can't speak to whose need is worse. But I will tell you that you may not have a fire at your house, you may not have to have police there, but most of the time you will need EMS. Fire responds to, they said 75% of their call volume is for EMS. EMS responds to approximately 60,000 calls a year. So it's helpful, of course, to have the fire department there because there's 13 ALS ambulances, 24 hours a day, 2 BLS ambulances, and without their support, we would have patients really waiting for trucks. The one thing that my previous chief touted was the fact that our fleet is aging. We have probably 75% of our frontline vehicles are over 100,000 miles. We've had trucks break down en route to calls with patients in the truck en route to the hospital. I mean, I think that's unacceptable for a city as great as ours. EMS is also, I think that our garage has done a very good job trying to keep the trucks on the road. But year after year, we've been cut because for some reason we're not looked at as just as important. But like I said, you may not always have a fire, you may not always need the police, but EMS is a 24-hour-a-day thing. So that's all I can say about that. I mean, we need vehicles. I won't say we're in dire straits. We are behind the 8 ball. We do have a lot of trucks that are very outdated. And like I said, our garage does the best that they can to keep them going on the road. So.
Thank you, Chief Gilchrist. And from my opinion, you're as important as the fire and the police, or EMS. If I had to, because it's not life-saving measures, public works maybe, but as we can see, across the board. And I think it's important to note for the public here that these vehicles are continually running 24 hours a day, especially in the police department, right? Shift is done, 2 more people jump in, and that vehicle continues to ride. So what is an 11-year-old vehicle that we typically would have 100,000 miles on? Some of these vehicles have 160, 170,000 miles on, and that's why we're always forced to bandage them together. Phil, from our Pittsburgh Police Department, if you want to remark on the fleet at all. I personally made a trip down to the garage, and Sergeant McDaniel and his crew were down there, and they do a great job. They really do, in patching up what we have out there and getting it out on the road. But it was there and then that I started to see the problems within the police department. So if you want to add to anything.
Yes, sir. All I would do is echo. We're not in competition with our contemporaries here, fire, EMS, or anyone, but our fleet also needs assistance in a big way. All right. If you can just imagine, you talk about how often are these vehicles used, it's the cars don't turn off. They are literally around the clock, 7/24, that the car is on and being utilized. And things that are out of our control that's costing us as far as vehicles go is accidents, whether it be maybe the fault of our operator, the officer, or somebody hitting a police vehicle. It takes it out of service. So we're losing cars. Each weekend when I get the text, it's like, oh, we lost another one. And that continues on. Since 2020, we have not received any cars, new cars. And that COVID was one factor, and then in 21, the Ford manufacturers just weren't building cars for us. So we're suffering in that way. We're hanging on, and we're starting to trickle cars in right now, but not nearly fast enough to maintain and service the city like we're supposed to. Talk about the service of a car, we don't go by years, we go by mileage for a unit, police patrol unit, and usually we like to say 100,000 miles. We start rotating that car to be utilized in a different fashion. It might, from a patrol unit, it might go to a what we call an X car, a specialty car, something that can do a detail or some other event going on. Right now, and that's because the car had so many miles. But right now, we're in a situation where our cars that are on the road, our patrol units, now have up to 150,000 miles on it. they're exceeding the X card that we thought we was going to retire several years ago. So again, we're in dire straits for vehicles, and I won't beat it to death. You get my gist of what I'm trying to say too.
Absolutely, and thank you for being here. And I saw that firsthand myself, so I do understand that. And we were able to acquire some police cruisers, and I know we're working on some more. So we hope to straighten that out. Councilman Wilson, I know you have a time constraint. Please, the floor is yours. Any questions you have for these ladies and gentlemen?
No, I'm good. I appreciate you going through the whole, everyone that showed up to talk about their own issues. So, just first question, just so I can get my bearings. Equipment Leasing Authority, how many do we own versus we lease?
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Director. We're at about 1,180 vehicles total in the fleet. Lease, we have 7 fire trucks and a few short-term leases for Public Works, filling in for some vehicles that we lost before we had time to replace them, or were funded to replace them.
Yeah, I remember those were the trucks that there was money that was, money that was shuffled around to get that over. It was a couple years ago. And then there's 7 fire trucks.
7 fire
versus
trucks.
How many? 30, you said?
There are 39 frontline fire apparatus, and that's just the trucks and engines. That doesn't
So
include
how does
all the
that,
other.
why is that? Why do we have 7 lease and then we own the others?
That's just the way we were funded that year. We really needed fire trucks, so that was the quickest way to get to a
What year
good
was
number
that?
in. That was 2020.
Okay. And then, but ultimately we want to own them.
And it is a lease to own.
Is a lease to own. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I know these are like simple questions, but I'm just trying to really understand the basics of whoever is on the, everyone who is on that authority comes together and how they make these decisions. So it's all lease to own. Even the trucks that we are doing at DPW, those are all at lease to own.
Those are short-term leases at DPW. The fire trucks are a lease to own. When we're done paying the lease, the ELA will own those vehicles.
Okay. All right. And then, so we should change the name. But that's a bad joke. But, Equipment Owning Authority doesn't have a good ring to it. But in general, the option is to own. That's what we want to go for all the time.
I would say that that's the best option for us. If we could commit to a replacement plan that works for the entire fleet, it's true. There's a huge market for municipal vehicles out there, for used municipal vehicles. There are leasing companies out there that are making a fortune off of it. We get really good pricing from a lot of the vendors. And when it's time for us to sell them, if they're lightly enough used, people know that we're maintaining our vehicles every 5,000 miles. We're repairing them when they break down. We're not neglecting the vehicles. So they're a hot topic item for a contractor that needs a pickup truck, a volunteer fire department that needs a new lightly used fire apparatus. And we could take that money and put it back into the fleet, and it would lower the burden on the budget.
So I thought we had the street sweepers. I thought we leased them.
We did, but we leased to own them, and that lease is currently up, so we own those street sweepers now.
Okay. All right, well, maybe this is a conversation for the next budget season, but in terms of like leasing to own, then we bear the responsibility to fix them? Because I thought the whole point was that they keep breaking down, so then we put it on the person that we leased it from to fix it.
So if we lease to own, it would be on us to repair them, and it's kind of 50-50 with the lease, the short-term leases. If we damage the vehicle, we're responsible for maintaining it, but they do maintain for preventative and the warranted items.
Yeah. All right. Good to know. And then who is in charge of devising the plan to make sure that I never realized there's new concerns of COVID and supply delays and just the back order of everything. But my understanding is the Equipment Leasing Authority would come together and they would devise this plan in terms of what's the best strategy to go forward. So every time we come to the council table, are you all giving us the recommendations and then we
just fail at the council table to really, like, we get a bad grade on, funding it? I'm really trying to understand, like, what's going on here.
So currently the process, O&B, specifically fleet and procurement, meet with the departments, the directors and their bureaus, and discuss fleet needs. And then we put those requests into the capital budget. Those are scored against all the other capital projects, and then we are presented with what was approved. And that's what comes to council for the budget meeting.
So can we get a hold of what you submit to OMB?
Yes?
I'm going to burn myself if we get that already.
Just speaking to last year, we requested about $24 million in vehicles.
That's
and
fine.
We were
I just
funded
want
about
to know, like,
6.5.
what the real number is and you're basing that on, like, is there also some sort of schematic that you're basing it on, or some sort of calculation? Like, it's $24 million we're requesting because we're following we only own till it's 100,000, or we, as soon as that vehicle hit 100,000, then there's another number that there's a check mark, or the tally goes up.
We're taking into account what we're short for each department, as well as what we need to replace within the next year for each department. Each time we do those requests for the capital budget.
But that is like the strategy, like, it's, you're looking at the fleet and there's some value of the mileage and everything, and then there's the tally goes up. Is that?
Yes. So the strategy, we're trying to get the fleet to a good life cycle. So, and each fleet's different. So you can say 10 years, but it's different for each piece of the fleet. There's different specialties. Like Chief said, police cars run 24/7. So they go more by mileage, which would take them out at 3 to 4 years. EMS and fire are not 10 years either. They're 24-hour
so
service.
they have different ways that you quantify how you're going to order another one.
Yes.
Put that on the request to OMB.
Yes, and we see the trends. Once we get to a certain point with each type of vehicle, we start to see, the downtime tremendously increase, as well as the cost of maintenance and repairs.
Okay. All right. Get my bearings here. So then when we're faced with, obviously, $24 million is a lot of money, if that's what typical order is. So then there's some hard decisions to be made. So now there's another factor, which is the delays. So what's the calculation now? Like, is it just does the way we quantify change, or who's in charge of that? Like, that has the authority already met and figured out how they're gonna reorganize how they calculate it?
It's really tough to track, the supply issues. We know that we got to start ordering more at a time because we have to compete with those supply issues. We haven't put a police car in service since 2020. There are no 2021 police cars because they stopped making them. We're just starting to receive the 2022s. So, yeah, I mean, we just have to get creative and hope for the funding, that we request.
Okay. And then pertaining to fire, there were how many trucks that were going to be ordered, and then that order was redone because the request wasn't going to meet the standards? How many trucks were? There was 3 that were going to be ordered. And if that we did, even though they were not the right ones, that would meet the standards that we want here, would those be here today?
No. If we had not canceled that order and went through that order, we'll still be about a year out. If we had not canceled that order and we placed the order, we'll still be about a year out before delivery of those apparatus, which means we'll still be in the exact same spot we're in right now.
So has there been a full debrief on that? Like, even if we would have went through with that order, we still would have been short in the scenario of...
We would have been short and riding with unsafe rigs. So those particular rigs were by the last administration, I was told, hey, we got you 3 new rigs. No one consulted me as the subject matter expert as to what our needs were. So it was a situation of someone saying, hey, Chief, we got you this nice, shiny ink pen. It's brand new. Look at it. It's pretty. And my response was, wow, that is pretty. I don't need an ink pen. I need a hammer. So those things were not viable for us.
I got you.
So
So that was
we
one
had to
part
get
of
rid of
this. That was one part of the decision of in the prior to go with that order.
Yes.
But still, there was a decision, at the time of the ELA to request the amount of vehicles. So what was the request at that time? If there was 3 that were funded, what was the initial request?
I believe the initial request was 3.
So what went wrong? If we still wouldn't have it today.
Supply chain.
Supply
Yeah,
chain.
Supply chain, correct.
So then, okay. All right. All right. So it looks like, how do we get a handle on supply chain?
Us, that's everybody, every industry in the country is suffering from some form of supply chain issues.
So who actually reports on? We just call up the company and they say, we're 3 years behind?
Oh, that's basically it. They're 2 years
And how
behind.
accurate are they?
I'm sorry?
How accurate are they?
That I could not speak for. I have to take their word for
We
it.
know inaccuracy.
It's their operation. We kind of are at the mercy of their word.
But it's industry-wide. It's not just one manufacturer saying this. All the manufacturers are saying this. So it's by numbers pretty legitimate.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if anyone's tracking actually the accuracy of what they're saying. But yeah, anyone? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in my previous employer, I signed a contract for an apparatus, and they put on our specific timeline with a addendum of we might not be held to this timeline depending on supplies. So
No one's responsible. All right.
there is tracking mechanisms for the various manufacturers, and through our contacts, we're able to reach out to see who's doing what. But
No, I believe they're trying to do the right thing. I'm just trying to think through. That's what the responsibility of the ELA is, but to think through. So I just asked the ELA to think through, how to really make it seems like the most challenging thing to actually make the correct request.
Well, I think we keep the requests where they are. We still need the vehicle.
Yeah, you still need it.
It's just that it's taking them longer to come in. So
how many of this
it's even more important that we actually order what we need right now, because if we decide not to order it today, tomorrow when we go to order it, it's going to be even longer of a wait.
So how many this year? How many are going to be requested this year?
For fire, we requested 4.
4.
And for 2023, we requested 4. We received 0.
You're correct. I was thinking about the fleet plan for adding that in this year. And really the challenge is it has to be comprehensive. It has to be a plan to distribute those purchases over time. Over time. The proposal for 2024 is 5 engines, and then subsequently the same.
So this fall, you're going to send 5 engines over to OMB.
Requests?
The requests
for the
for
capital.
5.
Those will be in by July 1st. Yes, we've already met and
I
discussed.
like this. We
the
get us
requests.
all
But
on the same page with this. So it'll be 5 requested, and that's based on just literally the calculation of fleet. Do you agree that's what? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with it, but it's a request.
No, I want to know the request. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was our request.
Yeah.
How many trucks did we?
4.
Okay.
So the way that we have the plan laid out, it extends over an 8-year cycle, and it's front heavy to make up for some of the gap years. Now, does that tail off and stabilize? It does, but then we have to start getting back into the replacement cycle of the larger chunk purchases. There's a pattern that really is easy to track that shows a crisis point, a large purchase, no purchase, a crisis point, and if we can even those spikes, we have a much more thorough budgeting cycle. And to your question related to the life cycles, not only is there the industry standards and the standards that the ELA exhibits, but the American Public Works Association has a very vetted and comprehensive matrix to determine what is the effective life cycle of a vehicle, and it can incorporate in light use or that ready reserve vehicle along with frontline to be able to come up with a guidance document as to what those replacement cycles are. These just aren't numbers that we're pulling up. And you know, the chief mentioned mileage. Mileage is important. Mileage is important. Age is important in fire, but so are engine hours. And when we're starting, we're tracking engine hours and pump hours. Our vehicles aren't just the response to and the response back. It's the operating on a scene for multiple hours. All those components are engaged in being worn, and that adds significantly to the life cycle, or the age of the vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. So until we get there, how many are we going to be buying used or some sort of lease scenario for fire so that every station has a truck, or I believe there's 2 trucks at least.
It depends on the duty station.
Yeah.
To your point about leasing, the leasing can distribute that financial hit across a larger scale, and it really makes a lot of sense to make that payment plan through the leasing authority. That has a good opportunity for us to stabilize the condition that we're in, and then project where we're going to be moving forward. And I think that at least from fire's perspective, I can only speak to that, we have a pretty solid plan to propose.
Okay. And then in terms of TPW, do you have, there's so much different equipment over there. I know, talking with the division that's in my district, they, I often hear like the mowers and all that. Are we going to make when's the next order for the mowers?
The next order on those mower that they're going to refer to as the Tiger mower.
What about the actual, just the ones that cut?
Those are coming this year. Unfortunately, like the funds that I use to lease vehicles are also the same funds that I use to purchase mowers and equipment. And so part of my charge is to make the best value judgment, which we are very close to right now. But some of that equipment will be coming.
Okay. And then, do we have the trucks from the that were bought with the parks tax?
Yes, we do.
And so, how many additional trucks went to, let's just say, my district?
I can provide that for you. It will take me a bit of time to see how they're distributed, but.
And wait, did they replace?
Yes.
Or they just added on.
Those were replacement vehicles.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And then for EMS, how many? What's the term you all use? Trucks. Ambulances.
So for 2023, we were going to get either 2 new or 3 remounts. So, and we're still waiting from trucks for 2022. Just like you said, it's the supply chain shortage. The chassis are on back order. Like Chief Kokila said, the engine hours are most important. We have in EMS realized that since the city garage has been going by the hours of maintenance, our vehicles are seeing more productivity.
Okay.
So they're not breaking down as much since we're doing we're getting them maintenance by the engine hours, because they are constantly running.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And are there any questions that I should be asking them? I'm not asking. Now's your opportunity.
there might be another consideration, and I think it's important to point out that especially in the heavy truck maintenance facility, our fire truck fleet mechanics are really doing miracle work to keep these vehicles alive. They deserve a ton of credit, but they often have to stop on a routine maintenance or PA state inspection to fix multiple vehicles with quick fixes or quick patches to keep them on the road.
And is that first vehicle?
That is first vehicle, is the current supplier. But an effective reserve fleet is what's really going to make a huge impact for us. On a majority of our fleet is only getting in for an oil change once a year. And that's when it's required to come in off the road for a mandated state inspection. So only once a year that vehicle is getting cared for, because we don't have the reserve vehicles and the reserve mechanics to cycle them effectively through. If we had a sufficient reserve fleet that was in acceptable condition, we could transition a crew out of their frontline rig, send it into the garage with enough mechanics and enough supply chain to keep that vehicle on the road and properly maintained, extending that life cycle, as Chief Gilchrist mentioned, by maintaining it in the correct time frame.
By maintaining the correct time frame, you mean?
Actually changing the oil.
So you're saying that's not being done on the correct time frame?
Because we don't have the vehicle.
Because the vehicle's still out there.
Because
You
we have
can't-
to keep the
can't
vehicle.
wait. We can't pull it back.
And it's
So it
not
doesn't
a-
even sound like we'll even get to a place where we can see if that's all working properly until all these vehicles come on. Even if we did pay for the 5, that means that, we're, I don't know, what were they, 3 years on back order, you're saying?
2 years for an engine, 4 years for a truck. But that was the purchase of the used vehicles. The media kind of made it seem like we were taking these used vehicles, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden that was it. But the used vehicles reinforce our reserve fleet so that we can put a company into a used vehicle, and while theirs is getting whatever maintenance needs to
Yeah.
be done. And I have to agree with Chief Kukila. The guys down at First Vehicle Service have been working like crazy, and they would get a call from me, and they would know, and they're doing the best they can, and they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's a madhouse down. It kind of reminds me of
NASCAR?
of MASH. You remember
MASH?
the TV series MASH, where they're just plugging and playing, just making it work, and I'm greatly appreciative to that for them for that.
I just want to add on to Chief Jones's point. They can only do down there what they can do with what they have, and our reserve fleet is, as we've been saying here for the past hour, it is so bad, and I'm sure that Public Works and EMS and police see the same thing, but it's to the point where we get I've picked up a spare engine or truck to use and put in place in frontline because the frontline vehicle's down, and it comes with notes taped to the dashboard that the fuel gauge doesn't work. Don't go by the fuel gauge. It can't be fixed. This light that's on cannot be fixed. Ignore it. There's caution tape on hose line valves that can't be used anymore and can't be fixed. There's notes on the pumper that say it seems like it doesn't go into water pump mode, but you need to jiggle the throttle and then push it in, then pull it out twice. A, B, select, start until it comes on, and those aren't things you want to be playing with during an emergency. So,
Good to know.
Kind of like cheater codes in a video game, right? A plus. That's not the way we want to operate.
No, it doesn't sound good. All right, well, thanks. Appreciate you all coming here to give us that knowledge.
Thank you, Councilman
And
Wilson.
thank you, Mr. Chair, for having this posted agenda.
No problem. I'm glad you were able to attend, and you too, Councilman Warwick. It's about bringing attention to it. And you could see the desperation throughout the entire public works, or, public safety and public works, where we're at. And I couldn't agree more with the analogy as to, we need to stagger it better. We need to, make sure that when our newer vehicles are getting old, that we have a new, crop coming in. It's something we haven't done in the past. It's catching up, and it's biting us now, as we all see. And to Councilman Wilson's question, it's pretty evident, and I've talked to Chief Brian here, and, we got a real number as to what it would take to get the fire department just up to par. This is not high pie in the sky, new engines across the board, but we figured, I believe, around $12 million as to where we need to be just in order to have that staggered policy. And that doesn't mean next year we can't ignore it. That means moving forward. So my guess is somewhere around $20 million, and, we'll go to the administration and Chief Schmidt here and or Director Schmidt here in a bit. But I just want the administration to know I know the importance of this. We see it right here in front of us. This is why we wanted to have this post agenda. I know you know it as well. Brandon and I, I'm on the Equipment Leasing Authority Board, and so is Chief Frank, so is Councilman Lavelle. So we all know the issues and the problems that we're facing moving forward. Last year we came and asked for $24 million. This council approved $6 million. So it's not, I'm hoping that we're bringing it to the attention of other council members. So when that tough decision comes, and I'll let the administration kind of juggle where and how we can, get funds in order to bring these fleets up to par. But you'll have my commitment. I don't care where we take it from. If it's ARPA money that can be used for this fleet, we use ARPA money. If we have to take it from somewhere we already allocated it, that's what we have to do. We cannot let this fleet go to hell like it has been. And I don't mean to suggest the fire department is the most important. When I suggest that, you're all in the life-saving business here. But all these vehicles are very important to get to point A to point B. But I will say the time frame on a new fire engine or a new pumper truck, I believe is longer staggered than a new police cruiser. Am I correct in that, Brandon? The wait time. The wait time
is much longer.
Right.
I mean, if you look at Ford over the past 2 years, that would be true, but yes.
Right. And I'll say to Chief Jones, my very first vote on the Equipment Authority Board was the fact that you were not happy with those pumpers that the old administration had ordered, and they weren't to your specs. And you'll have my commitment, whatever type of vehicle we purchase for the fire department, and that goes for you, Chief Gilchrist, and you, Phil. I want to make sure that the people who operate in that department have full disclosure as to what is in that vehicle, and it's up to your standards that you're used to working with. And when we talk about patching up police cars, we also have to rig them, right? We also have to outfit them for our equipment, whether it be the cameras and things of that nature. So it's not just changing the oil or dropping a new transmission in. There's much more involved, and we're barely hanging on as it is. So I think this council is going to have to make some hard decisions. I'll take the lead of the administration as to where these funds can and should and will come from. You'll have my commitment that I will be voting in favor for vehicles across the board. It's going to be expensive, very expensive, but we can't ignore it. We're to the point where we absolutely have to do it. So with that, I would like to turn it over to either one of you three that want to go first and comment on the seriousness of the nature and maybe hopefully some ideas as to how we're going to, upright our fleet.
I mean, I don't have too much to add other than just to kind of reiterate what everybody said. Public safety vehicles and public works vehicles all work in conjunction together to keep the city safe. If Director Hornstein's team can't plow the streets, we can't get an ambulance or a fire truck or a police car to where it needs to be. So we need to make sure we're maintaining our vehicles and we have a plan that is consistent and spread across the board instead of, as everybody's mentioned, what has been done in the past is every 5 years we get to a crisis point, so then we buy a ton of vehicles. Well, that means all those same vehicles are going to be at the end of their life at the same time. And to Councilperson Warwick's point, I do the same thing with my own vehicle. I just got rid of a Jeep that was 14 years old that had 160,000 miles on it, and it was basically because it wouldn't pass inspection anymore. But these are emergency vehicles. These are vehicles providing a service. You don't want them to break down. If my Jeep broke down on the way somewhere, I'd call a tow truck and deal with it. But you don't want an ambulance or a police car or fire truck or even a plow truck breaking down in the middle of an emergency situation or when there's a ton of snow. So that's why we do carefully look at where we put those vehicles. They'll move them to the training academy. They'll put them in a lower use, so there's less chance of that occurring. It's all a matter of smart management of the fleet, and currently because of the lack of funding, we're not doing that. We are duct taping and bubble gumming things together, and as they said, sometimes taking things out of service, which doesn't mean we don't do it. It just means we're not providing the level of service that we normally should be providing. That's all.
Frank?
I also don't think I have a ton to add except to say that, you've heard Chief Kukila, you heard Director Hornstein. Brandon, people here know how to do asset management, and I think we would like to get to a place, leaving aside the supply chain issues, because the best laid plans are going to get messed up by that. But putting that aside, I think we'd like to get to a place where we could think about our vehicle investment as one thing. All the vehicles that we need work together, as Director Schmidt said. We can figure out where the repair costs, get to that kind of optimum for those, and then, it's kind of like you pay your mortgage. Like, this is what it's going to cost to keep us in that asset management plan. And I think, the current ELA is pretty committed to getting that analysis done, and, so that we're not always coming to council saying, right now, but in fact can say, this is the way that we would work ourselves into a situation where we're really getting the most value for our money, because we're hitting that, kind of sweet spot where we're buying, selling, and repairing in the way that we should do that. So that's what we, want to be able to bring to council and bring to the citizens, and we're kind of working on that. And you can see the beginnings of that even just at this table. That's where we like to get. That's what we'd like everybody to know, and then we'll see if we can get there.
Yep. Well said, Chief Frank. And, it's really been a pleasure working with you guys on the Equipment Leasing Authority Board. We recognize it. I tell people the administration recognizes it. I wouldn't say council recognizes it. I'm hoping this is a start that council says it's an eye-opener for us, because, put money into vehicles, new or used vehicles, it's not an investment by any means. We don't get any gain, but it's a necessary evil. We need them across the board. And, Brandon, I know you requested $24 million is to right-size our fleet. That was pretty much across the board for all 4 departments that we have at the table here today. And I just want you to comment on that. Is that a raw number that would bring us to the point where we are on that staggered, as Chief Frank has mentioned, where we could be, treating it like a mortgage every year. And it doesn't mean we could ignore, even if we were to approve at $24 million, we still, next year, would have to allocate money and going so. That's just to bring us up to par, correct?
So 24 million last year was kind of to get us up to par, but not too fast. Working with the departments, we developed a 10-year plan that would get us where we needed to be. And if we followed that plan and stuck to that plan after that, we would be where we needed to be.
But first with the initial $24 million investment, and then sticking to the plan.
Correct. And it's high in the beginning. It's front loaded, of course, because we're really behind. And then it dies off somewhat. But there's still, we still need to invest more than what we're investing in the fleet, no matter what. Even if we got to a point where we were in good shape, in order to maintain that, we still need much more than what we're investing right now.
Absolutely. And Chief Frank, do you care to offer any options as to what pots of money we could look at to help right-size this fleet at this moment, or is that something you want to reflect more?
All know the pots of money. I mean, we're going to have some difficult choices. We are going to have some difficult choices, because they're, I actually think Councilmember Warwick said it. We have a lot of things that people want to do in this city. A lot of it feels urgent. Everybody's kind of working themselves out of Act 47, and we're going to have some real conversations about it. So it's helpful for people to know what the situation is, so we can have those conversations.
Yep. And before I close, I want to thank everybody for being here at the table today. I needed to hear it. I wanted the public to hear the dire situation that we're in with our vehicles across the board. Again, you will have my commitment. We've allocated a lot of money to a lot of things. Most of this money has to be spent by 2026. I'm willing to reevaluate what that pots of money went to, and getting at least half of that $24 million, get that up to at least $12 million, where we can go out and make the necessary purchases. And every day it goes by with this fire department, I feel like, oh gosh, we're not going to see new vehicles for 3 or 4 years at this rate. So we really need to do this sooner than later, I feel. Again, we as council will work with the administration, hopefully identifying pots. And not everybody's going to be happy. We all have our things that we're passionate about, that, whether it be ARPA money or, our, operating budget, or, we all have projects and things that we like to see funded. And they're all very good causes. But for me, there's nothing more important than upgrading this fleet as to where it needs to be. So with that, I just want to ask, anybody have any closing comments, anything you want to add? Please, Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, just looking at this $24 million number, and this is not, but just recently I heard on a podcast, I heard our former mayor talk about a commitment of some $100 million from these various nonprofits. I'd love to know where that money is. I'd love to know why we don't have, why that commitment isn't still there, because that, to me, they're right there, right? This is public safety. This is the health and well-being of our city. So I would certainly implore our various nonprofits, especially the large ones, to have a listen to this post agenda, right? Have a listen to hear about what our public safety folks, our public works folks are asking for, because it seems pretty simple. As far as just kind of what we've talked about here, again, I'm a strong believer in listening to the experts and what they say they need to do their jobs, right? Like, I'm not going to question whatever garbage truck you need to do this or that. I don't know, right? That's not my expertise. There is, but just in this one conversation, the one thing, and I think it's maybe worth an additional conversation, or at least is really around the fire trucks. I mean, what you were saying about, like, there's so much on a fire truck. There's just so much. It's like they say, the more electronics, like, the more that there's more things to break, right? So really, if there's any strategy that we can look at to minimize taking those big trucks out for things that don't require all that stuff and really preserving, I think that is that would be a good conversation to have. And I do want to point out, just in terms, I mean, like 70% of fire calls being EMS calls, and something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate in Pittsburgh, the fact that we have this EMS department, the fact that you don't pay, I mean, in Pittsburgh, if you don't have insurance, and I have paid out in rural Michigan like $3,000 to get my kid to a hospital, right? So that is actually a situation in many, many places, that you don't have this public EMS service so at any rate, if there is a way that we can look at, so, as it relates to the fleet and other things, I think that would be a good conversation to have. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for sitting down and going through this. It's very helpful.
Anybody else? Well, let me just end with this. Our fire department, our police department, our public works, and our EMS, I feel, are the finest in the nation. I really do. They deserve to have adequate vehicles. Again, I'm willing to go to whatever extreme I have to do to approve money in order to get your vehicles that you need, at least for now, that you can operate. So with that, if anybody else has nothing to add, we will adjourn. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it, and big eye opener for us. Thank you.